Anyway, yeah, I'm going to cover some of the final products. I just realized that it's like 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag here. That I'll run through some of it. If there's any questions, feel free to come up afterwards. But we have like an hour and a half of this going on. Look at the schedule. Strahd's in the big room there doing side scan mag data collection if you're more interested in that. And then Hannah's in the other room talking about autonomous vehicles in HYPACK. What's that? Oh, no. Well, I mean, if everybody clears out, then maybe hang out in the back or something, Go back downstairs, I suppose. I don't know.
Open her up.
Yeah.
Can't drink all day. Don't start in the morning.
So, anyway, when we're talking about the final products, most of the sessions over the past couple of days have been, the data collection, the mission planning and stuff like that, data collection, the processing, and now you have all this data. It's like, what do I do with it? I covered yesterday some of the sounding selection tools for thinning out data, and I'll try to cover what I can here in the final products. Most of these I'm talking about are pretty much under the final products drop-down menu over here. And these entail 3D terrain viewer, which is so it's a 3D viewer that we've had in HYPACK for quite a number of years. We haven't had much development in this. Actually, we haven't had any development in about 3 or 4 years. We're talking about trying to revamp that in the not too distant future, make some better options and everything. The cross sections and volumes. There was a volumes presentation yesterday that they were covering. Export, taking all your data and export in some sort of a CAD format or ASCII format that you might want to bring into another piece of software. You can export to DGN, DXF, quite a few other things. There's 2 HYPlots here. The standard HYPlot program. I think I'll start off with that presentation, and then the one that this one that called HYPlot Multi, what we call it for short, where you can plot multiple sheets. I'll explain that later on. This was done way back when Pat Sander was still here. He was always kind of had the attitude where I don't want to mess with HYPlot. Let's work with this other HYPlot Multi, and then down the road maybe we could combine them. This coming year, or for next, hopefully for the next conference, we're actually going to take these programs, combine them, and actually build it into the main shell here. So, a couple reasons is that all these programs share the same code, and the other is that why have everything in separate programs that are basically doing the same thing, doing the drawing that you see in the main shell. So we're going to build that right into the shell and everything. So, looking forward to it.
How do you know what the earliest version or the latest version when you receive stuff from other companies? Since you get CAD, DGN, you get DWG files. What should I be downloading? Send it to me in a 2012 version or 2013 version? A lot of times it's so new that when you try and bring it in, it doesn't come into HYPACK.
Oh yeah, that's a good point because we haven't updated. I'm going to write that down. Is that we use something called it's Open Design. It's basically a bunch of egghead programmers that like reverse engineer MicroStation, AutoCAD, and everything, and they create these little engines for drawing all this stuff. And we haven't updated that Open Design in a couple of years. We tried doing it, I think, in either last year or the year before, but there were it was really buggy that we had to revert to the last one. So I think the last AutoCAD that we could support is probably around AutoCAD maybe the 17 or so, like 2017. I don't know what the version number is or anything like that. And then MicroStation, I think the latest is still V8, right? So I don't know how many MicroStation you guys. You might know, John. Is that you guys use V8 in Savannah?
They still use MicroStation,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Use
You still use V8 and everything? I think most of those files will still draw in HYPACK too. So
There's going to be a big change in the next year of MicroStation to the 64-bit format, and it's a whole new way.
including the files too, right?
Yeah.
I can write this stuff down here. just a note here so that we can kind of keep right up on that. Amongst all the changes to geodesy and everything
Right.
in the next few years, this is going to be going to be busy. Okay, new MicroStation, huh?
I don't think it's new, but it's new to the core.
Right. Always a few versions behind.
Start thinking retirement soon, huh?
There's something to get rid of people.
Yeah, yeah. Nice job in the food service industry or something, I don't know, you know. I always said, I just want to give up and go work on a driving range or something, drive the cart. Small, medium, large bucket? Okay, so let's start with, actually, I'm going to start with HYPACK, I think, because some of the stuff runs in. Here we go. All right. Okay. For the, we have some new people here. Okay. So a lot of you guys use HYPACK, or I know some of the districts still use it pretty much. Maybe not for their final product, but a lot of that stuff is either done in, you know, CAD or DGN. I know some of the core districts actually will use it for, you know, if they're doing some processing, quick processing out in the field, they need to get it out, get it back to the office. They'll use HYPACK, create a plotting sheet, save it out to a PDF or TIFF file or something like that, and send it right to the main office. You know, just I guess we, I don't know, show that they're actually working. You know, but yeah, it's got a lot of cool options. It's some of the sheets come out really nice and everything. Some of the abilities here is that the interface is very similar to the main HYPACK shell. And again, the reason for us to migrate into the shell is just the redundancy of the program. Plus all the background files that you do in HYPACK, TIFF files, E&C charts, DXF, DGN, Mr. SID files, JPEG 2000. We try to support almost any, you know, type of background chart available. The import of graphics you can bring in either into title blocks or just a graphical image that you might want to plot on the screen. You can do all the stuff like the color bar, compass rose, scale. There's a lot of different settings and options for all these tools. You can zoom around on the screen, just make sure that you have everything, or you know, everything's set the way you want. If you want to fine tune, maybe you move the compass rose to a more exact spot, you can do that. You know, what you see is what you get. Plus any Windows-based printer or plotter, but I think most people will use it now, just plot right directly to PDF. We have our own internal exporting to PDF, TIFF file, and I think it's DXF that are actually enabled right now. Or you could use like a Windows driver like Adobe Acrobat and plot and use their PDF writer if you want. And then there's some cool things where you can save. Once you have the sheets set up the way you want, you can save the templates for them, so you can reload these where it's going to load the title block and the compass rose in the same spot. Use your sounding colors and sounding styles and so on. We got everything there? Okay. One thing is that HYPACK requires a plotting sheet, and if you don't know how to do that, when you go into HYPACK, under Preparation Editors is the plotting sheet editor. And when you click on that, you get this little dialog box. Just move it off to the side, and you see a rectangular shape on the screen. Usually it remembers your last setting, and basically what you do is, you know, you can manually resize everything by dragging the lower left-hand corner to the area that you want. Use the opposite corner to rotate, and then you can size by the other two corners here. Yeah. And as I do this, you see the numbers change in this window. Of course, right behind me. Sorry. You can change the height and the width, and then you can change the scale. There's also a bunch of predefined sheet sizes in here. If you go to Edit, Predefine, you got your ANSI A through Fs, and then you have your ISO A size sheets and B size sheets. So if I go to the ANSI E size sheet, click on it, it sets the proper length and width, and then I can just go in here and then change the scale. So if I go down to like 50 or so, I'll drop it down and so on. Okay, so once I do that, I save this as a plotting sheet. I won't save that one because I think I have one in here. and it'll be listed under the plotting sheet files folder over here. If I need to make any edits to that, I can just double click on it, bring it right back up here. But as I mentioned earlier, HYPLOT requires a plotting sheet in the project before it opens. If you have multiple plotting sheets, it's going to prompt you to choose one. And then once you choose a plotting sheet, the program will open and just kind of scale everything right to your plotting sheet in HYPLOT. So let's give that a shot here. Final products, HYPLOT. And there we go. Okay. So you have the same zoom tools and everything like you do in the main HYPACK shell. And then on the left-hand side, you've got all kinds of different things here where you can enable and disable the different files. This example, I've got some edited files. I can disable those and maybe enable my sorted files. If I have a channel design file, advanced channel, I can enable, disable that. I've got all my background files listed over here. Border files, matrix, pretty much everything that you can draw or create in the HYPACK shell is available here. Now, a lot of the settings, there's different style borders available in HYPACK, and if you click on the border drop-down menu, if I choose none, you'll see it won't draw anything. A single border just draws a single line around the edge of the plotting sheet. Double border, I believe, creates a little like a 2 centimeter space around with the second border. Double border with the title area creates a title area off to the right of your plotting sheet. IHO border is grayed out at the moment because that will only work at preset 90 degrees, 180, 270 degrees, and 0 degrees, just the way it's designed. So I have my plotting sheet rotated for this survey, so I can't load up the IHO border. And then we've had a few for different customers. Chinese couple companies have them. There's some Russian national border that our customers in Russia like to use, Russian Navy and stuff. And then we've done a couple Army Corps style borders where you have basically, I guess, mimicking the DGN type sheets. So we've added those to the program. And there's ways you could go in here and edit all this information. I don't know why they're all different. You got the New York Corps, Norfolk Corps. I guess they're slightly different information, and the New England Corps borders that we added. If you click on the border options, then you get the little options here where you can modify the settings for those title areas. Okay. So that's set like that for now. Now I could. There's a lot of parameters in here that I could go in and set up and change. Like you see the color bar over on the left-hand side. There's a scale down below, adding text, compass rows, additional title blocks, and all that kind of stuff. So if I click on a little hammer and chisel, you get a little kind of a control panel like you see in HYPACK. So again, you have the same options here for all the borders. You can hit the options for the different, if you want, for some of these where you can actually edit where the borders actually have the title areas or title blocks, and there change the line widths and the colors.
Are you limited to the amount of text? If you add too much text, will freeze up the icon.
I know there were some bugs with that a while back. I thought we fixed it for the actual text boxes or for the title boxes.
No text box.
I think we had fixed that a number of years ago. Well, maybe like 2 years ago, because somebody had complained, and I think you could actually type it into the title block area, but it just, I think there was a limit to like 255 characters or something. It was kind of a stupid limit, and they just increased it to, threw a couple zeros on the end, so something like that. So for the color bar, there's a whole bunch of options here also. The X and Y offset is the location. In fact, a lot of these items that you have drawing on the screen, I could disable if I don't want to plot the color bar. If I click it back on, click on apply, and I could also take some of these objects and just whoops, look at my zoom tool. That one there. And then just use my mouse to drag some of these items around if I want. Nope, what did I do? Did I have two of them on here? Nope. Ooh, that looks like a little bit of a bug here. I have to look into that. The compass rows I could drag around, and some of the title blocks. I'll show it in a little bit the title block editor, but you can actually anchor the title block so it stays in one corner. If I could disable the anchor and drag them around if I want. Okay, so going back to the color bar, you can change the font sizes, the bar height and width. The color bar, there's a couple options for the color bar height. So you can either set the height to the entire bar height or each individual colors. You have to plot it, have the labels in black, just show the first value instead of the range for each color. Add an outline to it. Prevent label overwrites. If you have a whole bunch of colors here, it's not going to overwrite the labels on top of each other. And then make it opaque where it just gives a solid color behind the, I do have it set that way, behind the text. And also if I choose elevation mode, it just flips the color bar the other direction, inverts the color bar. So this is for the compass rows down below. You have your offset here. You can add a magnetic declination and change the compass size. I got it set to opaque. If I uncheck that, you'll see it'll become transparent. And then change the compass color and the gradation color. Graphics, I can add any photos in here. Click on Browse. Let me see, I probably have something in my folder here. Pictures, anything good here? Yeah, that sums up the night. And then you could drag it around, resize it. Here we go. Last night. I'm pretty sure my last words are going to be hold my beer and watch this. So you can do all kinds of stuff like that. Matrix. If I'm plotting matrix like a multi-beam matrix or a dredge matrix, I've got a few different options. Most of the time with the multi-beam or standard survey matrix, you've got the survey depth, but I also have the options if I want to plot the dredge depth from a dredge pack, the difference between survey and dredge depths, seabed ID if I'm using the old, I don't even know if anybody uses those anymore, the old rock sand systems and so on. Dredge minus survey depth, channel minus survey depth, so it takes into account the channel depth of your advanced channel file and subtracts the survey depth from that, and channel minus dredge depth. So there's quite a few different options there. Border color, you got quite a few different north arrows that you can choose from. Plot all that kind of stuff. Plan line options, change the color of your plan lines on the screen and whether or not you want to draw the lines and or label them. You can, it's got the label options for plotting the line names, either perpendicular, parallel, or at a fixed angle, and you can change the fonts. For the ruler, the little scale bar down below here, the option whether to plot it, make it opaque, and also change the location. And again, you can drag that around also. Okay. Sounding options are basically the same as what you see in HYPACK. You have all the same type of options, the colors, the sounding styles, decimal point on mark, cartographic, pixel if you want to plot like a whole bunch of just points or something, colored points for like multi-beam data, the resolution, truncation, whether you want to do high or low frequency, add negative soundings, get a plus, all the same options that you see in the main HYPACK shell. You can also do add a font or use vector where it's actually going to plot to scale properly. So you can enter your your sounding size over here, and based on your sheet scale, it'll plot it properly. Targets, I think the only option here, it uses the main options that you have in the shell for drawing targets. The only thing you can do here is change the font size. Add text items here. I guess I do have more than one for navigation here. So again, if I could go in here or click on, I could just edit properties. There we go. So to create a text item, you just click on add or modify. Hit the properties. Enter the position for your screen here, whether you want to plot it opaque, add a border, and then just type the information here. But yeah, like I mentioned, I believe that we pretty much put unlimited text, but you should be able to put an entire disclaimer in there if you want. Okay, title blocks. You can access that here or through the settings drop-down menu for the title block editor. So I can click, if I have a title block loaded, I can click, highlight it and click on edits, and I've got all the information here that I could do the modifications to the title block. I'll go through the editor in a little bit. Track lines, a bunch of different options. If I'm using multiple mobiles, I can draw the additional track lines. Whether or not I want to have labels display the event numbers being displayed, or the event time, the orientation of the labels, file name information, all that kind of stuff, colors, font size. Chart options. This is kind of an old dialogue here that we put in quite a number of years ago, especially when you're plotting on a what do you call it, a regular, not a pen, I use that anymore, but most of the inkjet plotters also. You're plotting maybe a DGN file that has a bunch of colors in there, like you might have some yellow lines or whatever, and they're just way too, they're too faint, really hard to see. So we put an option in here to display all the line stuff all in black, so it just stands out a little bit better. So you have the option to display normally where it uses the actual, say, microstation, the DGN or DXF colors. And then you also have the option to display them all white. You might have some channel framework that you want to display over on top of the contour, and you want to have that come out in white, so you have the option to do that also. Bunch of options for the lat-long grids, plot and where you want to plot the labels. W84 if you're not working in, if you're working in some other geodetic system, another ellipsoid, the lat-long obviously would be different from the W84. So you have the option to plot the local lat-long or the W84, and then you have your regular local projection grid options here too, and then some sheet info that gets displayed here. That if you want to do that also. All right, let me see where I am in the presentations. I think I'm moving right along here. There we go. No, that's not it. Jeez. Windows 10, give me grief here. That's got to be it. Okay. All right, so we talked about all this stuff. Oh yeah. Once you have all this stuff set up the way you want, you have the option to save the template. Again, it's saving all those settings that we entered and modified in the control panel, all the items that we have on the screen. So if you create a sheet size for that one survey area, you go in there all the time. You can go. Your next survey, you can go click on load template, load the same template, and then it'll plop up all the same items. You might want to edit your title block for dates and stuff and so on, but other than that, it's going to bring it up the way you want it. Yeah, again, you don't have to keep redesigning the same plotting sheet later. Okay, enabling, we talked about the different parameters, just want to make sure I haven't missed anything here. Moving objects, the border options, compass rows, the projection grids, import of graphics, we did that, the matrix, the north arrow, plan lines, ruler, soundings, targets, text, we talked about that also. Okay, title blocks. All right, we'll go through the title block editor. Pretty straightforward. Again, like I could go in, load up. We have a whole bunch of pre-existing title blocks and if I go into settings, title block editor, here we go. I can open and these title blocks get sorted in later versions. HYPACK 2020 templates, HYPACK title blocks. Okay, so there's a whole bunch that we created for some of the districts and other things quite a number of years ago. I think the Savannah one goes to the early '90s or so, back up. But I think with Pat's DOS days, and basically the same information. And if I could go in there and load that up, and then again modify the different text items. As you click on a text item, you'll see it'll display the text down below here. This is the modification area. Or I could just go file, let's go file open, or let me do file new. No, I'll do that one, file new. And start from scratch. Okay, so the way that this works is that you go in here and basically give a title block size. So when I'm working in a foot grid, it's going to be in inches, and if I'm working in a metric grid, it's going to be in centimeters. So let me just do a 5. Let's do like 5 by 5 or something. There we go. And basically, what you're doing here is just building blocks. So I click on this add here, and it's going to create this little block, and I can just kind of drag it and move it around. Resize it, and then where it says element here, it's going to show it right here in the little text editor, and I just call it HYPACK. Oops, I just hit enter. It'll put the text in here. Let's do another line. Go to elements. And of course, I can change for each of these items. As I build the information here, I can change the font for each individual line. Now I could also get rid of this line by highlight this box here, and I could just uncheck the edges here, so I could get rid of the top of that one, and get rid of the bottom of this one. And it's just going to look like it's one type of a title block, one type of entity, I should say. Click on another one, and I have an option to go check box for picture. And I'll go back to my SPC, pictures, and what do we have here? Any good? Oh yeah. We have some different formats. Picture my 17-year-old picture there. Okay. All right. So I just kind of just build up the title blocks this way by just adding additional entities and changing either the text or adding a picture. Changing the font size, the font colors, and so on. And once I'm done, just give it I can save it, and then we're good. Okay. And I'll be able to see that and then just display it right on the main screen. We don't have to, let's see. Okay, talked about the custom title blocks, the track lines. Oh yeah, chart options has S57 options. I forgot about that one. So if I want to, we always draw when we load the E and C charts. A lot of times you see the little U's drawn on the screen there. That's the visual quality of data that you can go in here and uncheck that option if you don't want to display those on the screen, or get rid of some of the soundings and so on. Plotting sheet information is a little icon over here. Just gives us information about the plotting sheet, the files that are being drawn, the title blocks, and so on. Okay, and then if you're using an actual printer or plotter or plotter type driver, when you click on the print button, you get a window like this, and the default mode is the composite mode here, where it's basically raster and vector data that's being drawn. The vector stuff being mostly DGN and DXF files and so on. The raster if you're doing TIFF files or RNC charts and so on. And it's just going to try to plot it'll basically plot all that to scale. The direct plot is specific to vector stuff. But when you choose this option here, you're going to have an option to change your resolution. And then you have a few different things based on, it tries to plot things in pixels, or bitmaps, just a couple options. Like it says, if you choose this option, it's a little bit slower, but it's safer for really large charts. If you use the bitmap, it's going to be faster, for smaller charts. It might not work with a larger, because it basically spools a lot of data information, so you run out of memory and so on. So that's one of the options for printing or plotting. But I think most of the users are actually using the export options here. Window here. So if you go under File, go to Export, you'll see we have export to DXF, DWG, TIFF, or PDF. So the DXF or DWG is only going to handle the raster stuff. Like I can plot the E and C chart, the S57 charts, but I can't plot like a BSB chart to DXF or DGN, because that's a raster chart versus vector chart. Okay. But I think most people prefer to plot right either to a TIFF file or to a PDF file. So let's do a PDF real quick here. And again, you have some options here, whether you want to do raster. It's a smaller file size. The vector is higher detail, and what's nice about the vector is it does create the different layers here. So if you're setting to somebody that can actually enable or disable the layers in the PDF file. If I click on vector, you'll see it'll gray out the resolution. But with a raster, you can go in here and choose the resolution. So really big charts, you want to be careful. You might not want to try attempt at 600 dpi. Most of the time 300 is pretty safe for plotting to a raster chart.
Can I ask you a question with regard to that right there? So if you export to PDF, what I found is that if you have the density of your soundings that are so tight, 3x3 grid of your soundings,
Yep.
and you hit the soundings, don't display the soundings where they overlap in the plot.
Okay.
It'll plot it and you can see it, but when you go to the PDF, it kind of gets rid of that, and then all it does is just look like
Throw
10 million points. It doesn't maintain the overlap.
that one that do not, well, I forget what that option is in for the sounding. I think we might have removed it from HYPACK, the one where it just kind of thins out the data automatically or whatever.
I think you still have it in.
Is it in there? We gotta take a look.
But I know that if you don't watch your scale ahead of time and then change your grid pattern,
Right.
and just with a completely black screen full of soundings.
Well,
legible.
yeah, it's interesting you say that, because like if you go like and we add, the way you can set it up there in the in HYPACK, you have the same options in the shell, like for the soundings. Where if you go to soundings tab, if you choose the vector option here and use the standard vector size, and you play around with the scale here, you can see whether or not they're actually going to overlap. But the option I think he's talking about is the what is it? Oh, prevent sounding overwrite here. This one, right? Where it's going to basically
It just doesn't work when you release
Yeah, I think we might have actually removed it from HYPACK. Let me just take a look. Yeah, I think it was in here before, but we had taken it out because just more of a concern that might cause people issues, because it doesn't discriminate as to whether it's a minimum or maximum sounding when it does that. It just kind of thins out the data. So. Oh, okay, yeah, with the color bar for the text and everything. Does it work okay there? I think.
No, I'm still not ever been able to. You better know ahead of time, look at your scale.
Okay.
Your soundings, and then modify. Say you're going to do 5 by 5 or 10 by 10, depending on the size of your charges.
Yeah.
You have to look at it ahead of time, to scale your screen before you export to PDF.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to, just take a look into that one because. Yeah, I thought we had most of that kind of resolved, but yeah, pretty much. If you're pretty safe if you use this drawing mode here. You use vector for soundings, and you have the proper scale here, because with that it'll draw the actual true to the scale of your chart. So if you're using the fonts, I think that's where you could get into a little bit of trouble, because if you have a larger font, then it's really hard to scale that properly. To a sheet, especially exporting it out to a PDF. And some of these printer drivers really react differently, also. So it's a little bit tough. But I think one of the best practices is just to use the vector options here. You're going to get the they're going to plot better too, much clearer than the fonts. So kind of a nice option here. And if you're seeing the vectors drawing here on the screen. And there's no overlap or anything, that's the way that the vector ones are actually going to print. Like if I go right now to the font, I think it's not exactly what you see is what you get, like we say. But you zoom out, and you see they don't look like they're really changing size, they're just kind of getting obliterated. So I think that's probably what you're seeing. But we did have that prevent sounding overwrites in here, but we just a bit more of a concern that might cause somebody some problems down the road, that they're not applying the minimum soundings or the shoulder soundings, requiring that on a chart. So. Okay. Oh yeah, the plot. Let me go file, export. Let's do the PDF. Oh, let me go back and do. Maybe I'll try a couple of them here. This is with the fonts, so I'll do PDF. Let's go vector. I'll just call this font. Oh, I'm not sure if I wanted to do that. Should have done raster, would have been a lot quicker. Some of the charts take a long time. There's a lot of kind of a vector type triangles in here. I'm going to kill this if I can and start over. Let's go back here. Let's do raster, and I'll do like 150 DPI. And what did I say, fonts? Oh man, I don't want to do the edited files, I want to do the sort files. And let me just double check here. Oh, this is vector, okay. One more time. Export to PDF. Let's go raster at 96. Let's go even quicker here. This is vector. And then let's go back and change this to the fonts and compare the difference. So let me close out of here. and go to Explorer. If anybody doesn't know, the little Explorer folder at the top takes you right into the main project folder. It's kind of a nice feature. All right, so that's the fonts. I zoom in on that. But usually the fonts look a little fuzzier. And then these are the vector settings. They're thinner, but they're truer to scale. So that's the difference between the different font size. But a lot of times, if you have too big of a font, they're gonna just the nature of it, they're just gonna bleed over the top of each other. Let's see. Any questions so far? Let's see where we are. Export options, PDF output. Example of plotting to DXF also. Again, you know, you could have a bunch of items in HYPACK, like your HYPACK DXF contours, your plan lines, your advanced channel files. Those are all vector items. All the compass rows and the color bar and the borders and everything, title blocks. That's all vector items. So that exports pretty easily to DXF or DGN. And you can even, if you have an ENC chart that you might want to bring into AutoCAD, it's an easy way to export that to DXF and bring that right into AutoCAD. I don't think AutoCAD supports ENCs. Does it? I don't think they do. Anybody know about that? Yeah. I don't know if there's a plug-in or not for it, but I don't think so. And then just another example of exporting a standard sheet, plot sheet with soundings, title blocks, borders and everything, and bring that up into AutoCAD. Okay. Now the multi-sheet HYPACK, again, works a little bit differently. So essentially what you're doing is initially creating an actual a layout, or which is essentially going to be your main sheet size. So you specify that first, and then you create individual plotting sheets for the area as we showed in the plotting sheet editor right on the main HYPACK screen. So you can add, you can add multiple plot sheets to it, drag them around, move them to different spots, add text item outside of these plot sheets, and each one is controlled individually. So I might want to enable, side scan up on one sheet and maybe contours on the other, as we see along here, or maybe soundings on one, and then side scan on the other. Okay. So to do that, let's see. Actually, what I'll do is just take a oh, I think I have a project here. Let's try a multi. This is a project I was messing around with, and I had set up multiple plotting sheets along here, Savannah River, and I spent too much time on it. But to run that, you go back under Final Products, HYPACK plotting sheets. And I have the option to create a new layout. If I click on that, I have an option to choose the sheet size that I want for my entire sheet size, or I can also go in here and choose custom, and then manually enter a height and width. Okay, let's just do a ANSI e-size, save and load. And then I could go in, it saves it as a .lot file. That's basically the layout file. Sounds good. And then it's going to prompt me to add individual plot sheets. So I can just simply load those, and it's going to scale everything to that sheet size. Sounds good. I'll add one more here. Okay. So I could specify the, let me hit cancel here. Oh, what did I do? Hit the wrong button, I think. You open a layout. And then add a, hit cancel over this way. I did wrong. B. Okay. Close out of there. There we go. So again, I could place these in different areas. And now to modify each one individually is that I could go under, let's see if I have this right, the control panel. And first of all, I can specify which plot sheet I want to work with. So I might want to go plot sheet B here, go to my, yeah, let's just leave B over here. And then I could modify and add my compass. I do have a plot compass, there we go. And I'll plot it to my, my B sheet. And anything I do in the control panel will pertain to that one plotting sheet. All right. I can also go in here and then enable, or if I want to disable the background chart, maybe add my grids to that one. Okay. I can also go highlight that one, enable, disable, and then go to my control panel and then work on that. And I believe, if I got this right, I can go into the plot sheet option here. Click on the lot file, and I can add like a title block here, agency title block. Now where did it go? What if it's under the? I'm not sure where I placed it. I did something with it. Let's go back to the lot file. So I can control all these quite differently if I want. Oh, this probably gets plotted. I might want to choose a different one here. Remove, add title. Yeah, down below here. So I can move, add images to the main lot file, different objects and stuff, and control these all individually. And it works just like your standard HYPACK program. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, how are we doing on time? Ooh, we're getting late. By the way, I think there's some, if you guys are still around noontime, I think there's some closing comments in the main room from Garrett, so if you want to stick around, make sure you get there. I think the last session is 12, and I believe they're doing anybody wants to do the certification test, I think Jerry's going to be running that 12:30. So there's no lunch served, but there's going to be at 10 o'clock, yeah, there'll be the break in the exhibit hall. And then they... once the break is over, the exhibitors supposed to pack up in like 5 minutes, so they'll be gone before you know it. It's like you always drive home from work really fast. You drive really slow to work. So I think we're good here. Okay, so I'll go through some of this until we run out of time. Excuse me. Here we go. Final Product Wizard is a tool that we added a few years back. I think we might have done this for Laurent is here from the French Navy. They kind of contracted us to do this. It's basically a simpler way of getting a final product out of your edited data, whether it's single beam or multi-beam data. The idea is that it's a process where you load up a whole bunch of stuff in there, and it's going to run through multiple processes simultaneously, and then basically export a plotting sheet. So the idea is that it'll take your data set, run through either one of the sounding selection routines if you want, thin out your data for soundings, for plotting your soundings on the screen, or for contour, or both if you want. So you have the option to do that, to basically run the tin model engine and generate contours out of your data. In addition, you can add your plotting sheets to it. You specify the plotting sheet size that you want, with or without the templates that we created in HYPACK, also with title blocks and everything. We also export a channel condition report. We did that for the New England Corps quite a number of years ago. Now it's built into the Hydro program. So around the world that actually attempt to use it, play around with it for general reports. We can also do S57 depth overlay in that too. And then in addition to the final result, you can export right out to a PDF, GeoTIFF, and again, the contours and stuff are all automatically saved to a DXF file. So this is what the program looks like. I'll run through a couple of the presentations here, and then I'll run through the program. So when this pops up, you'll have a bunch of tabs right up at the top of the screen here. And the first thing you do is when you add your edited data files. So this could be XYZ data, logs, it could be multi-beam data, and pretty much any of the sounding data that you want to load into the program. Once you do that, you have a couple options down here, whether you want to enable the contouring function, enable the plotting, enable the channel condition report output, and also enable the ENC overlay. As you add these, you'll get a couple additional menu tabs at the top. Okay, so when you get to the next tab, the sorting tab, this is where you have two additional tabs. You have the plot sort or the contour sort, and you can basically choose any of the sounding selections that you have in the main HYPACK program. So if you click on the sort one, you get some of the same options that you have in the sorting program. Enter a radius, whether if you're doing single beam data, you have depth 1 or depth 2, higher low frequency. You have the three-dimensional sort option, and then all the different modes you have available from the sorting program. Okay, and then you apply the same settings by hitting this button to the plot sort as it would be for the contour. But typically, I think you'll plot at a different scale of soundings versus the contours. You might want to have a denser data set for the contour generation. Okay. When you click on the contours tab, it's basically the contouring, the DXF contouring tool that's built in, that's in the tin model program. So you do 2D or 3D contours. For the plotting sheet purposes, the 2D contours will work, but if you want to save and bring those into AutoCAD eventually, you can also do the change that to the 3D contour. So you have your tin options, the tin max side, which is the maximum leg in order to create triangles out of your data set. The contour parameters for smoothing the data, smoothing contour lines, whether you want to do just contour lines and or the solid fills, you can do that also. The way you want to color the solid fills or the lines, you have to use the color scheme. You want all your lines in black, or use a custom setup. And then contour attributes, which are the same as in the tin model, where you can label the different contour lines if you want to change the label size, the locations, and so on. Most of that's laid out in the tin model anyway. And then this last tab here, these are the main tabs. Like I said, is the plotting one, where I could load up all the plotting sheet files. What I can do is add by default, it's going to display the background files that you have set up in your main projects. But you could go enable or disable background files that you might not want to send to your final products. But up here with the plotting sheet, also you can go, if you highlight a sheet, you can apply those templates that I talked about from HYPACK. So it'll bring in all the set the color styles, the sounding styles, the colors, the plot sheet files, color bars, and so on. Put them in the proper place as you want. And then if this one has if any of the templates actually have a title block, you can highlight that, click on the edit title block, so it'll bring up the title block editor. The option here to enable targets, if you have them enabled in the shell, it'll plot those automatically. And then you have your final output options to PDF, GeoTIFF, DXF, or DWG. And again, the DXF or DWGs are not going to handle raster type images. And then the resolution size for any of the raster type charts you want to do as far as PDF or GeoTIFF. Okay. If you choose to do the ENC overlays, it just uses it has the scale multiplier over here, the cell code, overlay usage, and also the product agency. Let's see if there's anything else here. Okay, let's run through that real quick. So again, that's under the final products. That was in another project, I think it was. Sample single beam 2020 here. Okay, so let me go under final products, click on the final product wizard. Okay, so I'll bring in my edited single beam files. I've got a log file. It's going to list all the EDT files. If I go under my sorting, I can choose to thin out the data. If I had already done it prior, I could just choose none. But in this case, if I showed you the sort options already, and you'll see that I could also use the cross sort, where it has the same options as the cross sort program. SB selection, where it basically uses the options from there, the options from mapper, and again, none. So right now I'll use sort, we'll use depth 1, I'll leave a radius of, I'll do 50 in here. Okay. No, actually, I want to sort, I want to keep that, for the contours I might want to do something like maybe a 10-foot sort or something, so I'll get a bit more accurate contours. But for the plot, I might want to plot, use the sort program and plot at 50-foot intervals. And then I have the option here, sort with no priority. Okay. Then if you go to the contour menu, yeah, we'll leave it at 2D. Tin max size, since I have I think these are probably longer, leave like a 500 or something foot tin max size. These lines are pretty far apart. I can do my smoothing options here. I use the color scheme. Then I have my contour attributes. So if I want to go in here, it lists all the available contours, contour levels based on that data set. And if I want to label them all, I can highlight them all. Check the box for enable label. When you see the label move to the center, that means those are enabled. Okay, change the line thicknesses and so on. And then spacing is for the location of the labels. So I'm going to do something like 1,000 here. And then the height, 50 was probably okay. Okay. Plotting, I'll add my plotting sheet. If I want to add, like I said, a template file, if I haven't had made a template file, yeah, I think I do have a simple single beam template. It'll apply all the template information, color bars, compass roses, and everything. If I have a title block, I don't know if I have anything in there. I guess I do. I can go in there and edit that. Okay. And then I have the final result here. So I could send it to PDF, GeoTIFF, DXF, or DWG. So let's do a PDF right now, and I'll do 150 dpi, and click on Run. So it's running through the sorting processes and then the contouring and then finally generating a plotting sheet. So process complete. I'm going to leave that open at the moment and then go to my folder, and I've got my PDF here. Supplied my template with the title blocks, border information. I don't think I have contours. Yeah, it looks like I have contours. I don't think I checked the box for the filled contours. That's what it was. And it also generates a couple sorted files in the sort folder, and it'll generate a DXF file for the contours, which is all stored in the same folder here. So I can, if I want, I can take those files and import those into CAD or something. If I'm happy with the results of the way the charts are coming in, I could go back to the General tab and then save that process. So let's call this 2020. So basically what's going to happen is that if I start from scratch again, I'm working the same area, but I have different data. Once I go into final products, I could load, my next surveys log file in here, click on load process, and it's going to remember all the settings that I had set up for the sorting, contours, and plotting. I just need to add the plotting sheets that I want to use specific for that. Okay. Any questions on that? Just an example, the channel condition report requires, we still have the channel condition reporter program that's under utilities, where you basically lay out your channel framework, set up your reaches and everything, and save out to what we call, I think it's a CCR file or something, RPT file, I'm sorry, that retains all the framework. So if I had one in this project, I could load that, enable the CCR output, and it's going to create a report that, your standard channel condition report that Army Corps supplies to NOAA for the controlling depth within the channel at different ranges. Okay, I think that's everything there. Oh yeah. It's not in here, but also the mention about the ENC overlays too. So it's basically going to take the soundings and contours and embed them automatically into an ENC chart if you need to supply that to like a pilot or something. Okay. All right. Next one is the export program. If anybody's familiar with that or not too familiar with it, that's under Final Products. You click on Export. And at the upper right-hand corner are the different formats that we can output. So we've got your AutoCAD, DXF, DWG, DGN, XYZ data, different flavors of the XYZ data, whether you want XYZ, you want XYZ with a record number, invert the Z value, or you might want YXZ for, I think some programs prefer what instead of easting northing, they might want northing easting. A bunch of different user-defined formats and some custom ones that have been in here for years for different, core districts or other agencies around the world. We can export to KMZ files, some of the data, and then also GML. This user-defined option, if I click on that and look at the options, is that the right button there? Yeah, user-defined output. Basically, all the information that's available in our single beam data. A lot of times it's easier just to export it right from the single beam editor, just pick and choose the columns, but you're actually able to go in here, do some additional work to it. There's the ones with the asterisks or items that are available from the all format files. The other ones are automatically generated, record number. Well, X and Y, of course, are in there too. and a few other things. You can create additional text strings if you want to create some sort of column format. So if I choose these options here, I could type in different information. So I want to put, like, I don't know, northing, easting, elevation, and basically I could drag these up and down. So if I start with my text string 1, put northing, I can drag it. And then have my my Y value following it, my easting, and my X following that, and then elevation with, let's say, corrected depth 1. I can do a space or comma delimited file. If I want to invert the depth, say for elevation mode, I can do that. We did some stuff for calculating KP values too for some of offshore customers and everything. So once I set up my user-defined options like that, I could go in here, choose my edited data, give it a name, let's call it defined. Create a text file and click on convert. So if I go into my folder, there it is. There's my data. I've got my northing followed by the Y value, the easting title thing with the X value, elevation with my inverted Z value. So there's a lot of ways of generating information from these edited or XYZ data or what have you.
How do you know under your CAD parameters how much to modify when you're setting something to a DXF? So when some of the end users, they put in a Lindberg or other programs that the search comes along with the text isn't so large. How do you know what it's going to produce when you under those CAD parameters and you give it a size? You got to give it some kind of dimension, scale. You don't play with it until they open it up.
Pretty much. I mean, one good thing is that you could draw it as a background file in HYPACK and see how it draws there. So once you generate your like a DXF or a DGN or something like that, once you close out export, you'll see it'll pop up automatically in the background files folder in HYPACK. Or you can just go refresh. If you want to keep the export program up, you'll see that. Just enable it on the screen and see how it looks there. Because we'll be able to draw all the stuff that we're able to export, as far as the DXF and DGN files and everything. That's usually the best way. I know we have control of some of that stuff. I'll show you, if we go through some of these options here. I don't know, does V8 DGN still require global origins and all that stuff, or is that specific to V7? I'm pretty much not very familiar with MicroStation. You guys know? I think that's specific to the old MicroStation. We still support the for V7 or version 7 DGN stuff, but I think that's specific to those files if you need to export to it. Okay, loading seed files and everything. So I'm not going to get too much into that, but that's specific to the V7 stuff. This is just an example of just choosing the DGN file and then importing it with a seed file or an additional chart there and bringing that up. I think it's a MicroStation or Bentley View or something. Most common is probably using the export to DXF. And run through some of the options here. So if I choose Well, it doesn't matter what I choose right now, but if I go to the options, you'll see that there's all kinds of CAD parameters here. So one of the options here is the input filters, and this is specific for the single beam data where you can do depth 1 or depth 2, high or low frequency. The CAD parameters are all listed here. So if I first click on the CAD parameters button over here, I've got some 3D positioning of the soundings for the different layers and everything. I think it looks a bit overly complicated here, but we just try to cover everything. Typically, the HYPACK versus AutoCAD convention is inverted. HYPACK's positive down, AutoCAD is positive up. We've had customers that want to, so we normally invert the Z value in the DXF file. And then, some customers that complained about that, and so we gave a bunch of different options of whether or not you want to invert the Z value, how to apply it as a 3D sounding on which level, and so on. Whether we want to negate the text or not, basically invert the text, absolute value. The scale factor is controls the width of the text. And I believe I'm not really sure how that works. I think if you increase it, it just changes the text type width of the soundings in the DXF file or DWG. And then you'll see down below here we have our DXF, our DWG versions here. So I think we go up to whatever V18. I guess that's 2018 maybe. And then we support the V7 or V8 microstation stuff. Okay. Again, origins of units, I believe, are specific to the microstation V7, which I would say is pretty much obsolete these days, but we keep it in there if somebody has some files that they want to play around with or convert. The next one is planned lines. So it gives you a layer name. By default, it uses plan, but you can go in here and put a layer name or level number. Is V8 specific to level numbers, or can you give it a layer name like you do with AutoCAD? Does anybody know? You can't use layer name? Okay. But, yeah, so it gives you the option. I know the V7 stuff, you had specific layers, and I think the core would typically use level 49 for soundings or something like that. Yeah, you can enter your text height here, and that's in real world units, CAD units. Whether or not you want to label the plan lines, and also you have your text angle style, perpendicular to plan line, parallel to line, and or also at a fixed angle. Okay. Shoreline here is it's going to take your CAD files, your background files or contours, and put them on a specific level. And I think now, if you have multiple CAD files, it's going to just create additional levels automatically. Soundings, we have a lot of the sounding options that we have in HYPACK, but we also added multiple type of sounding options here. I'll kind of explain that. I think it's in the presentation. Okay. So yeah, first of all, here we have the different the way we want to export soundings to the layers. Use sounding to layer ranges, either with the steps. Use source file name as layer name. Use source log layer name, or use the HYPACK color file to generate your layers. Get your text height, italic angle, so it kind of gives it an italic angles, like an italic style if you want. You have your options for perpendicular, parallel to the line. And then a bunch of different sounding styles, which I think is the next slide here. Yeah. So it's pretty kind of bizarre. A lot of people have wanted different options for the soundings. I think originally when I first started, we had one way of drawing basically the default setting, where there's actually two text objects, the whole number and the fraction, and then a point object. And they're all justified separately. So it was a real pain that it's not that, you can take it into AutoCAD, but you're not going to be able to rotate them manually if you wanted to. I think you could set up the little functions in order to rotate all the soundings at once, and it wasn't very easy to do with this method. So what we did, we created this double sound object sounding. So the 32.6 would be a text item. It would be 32 space 6 space to kind of keep everything even with a point here, so you could actually rotate right around that decimal point. And the point object only, which just creates a point object if you want. Single object soundings, where's a single text object that's just the lower left-hand corner justified, but we still try to place that decimal point in the proper location. Cartographic, I wish I remember how we set this up. I don't know if this is correct as far as the justification point. But it's a large object here, and with a large whole number and the smaller fraction value here. And essentially, the idea of that is basically right in the center. That would be the sounding location. And I think the way we justified it to make it close enough to keep most of the agencies happy was to lower right-hand corner, justify the whole number, and it might have been the upper left-hand corner here to justify the fraction. So this way you could kind of rotate in the same spot. And then we've added the vector option here a couple years ago also, where everything's justified to the location of the decimal points. They're all polyline objects, so they're nice because you can actually highlight those and scale them in AutoCAD and everything too. So that's usually the recommended if you want to export to and use them in CAD. I think we covered all that. So there's all kinds of different parameters in here. Plan line parameters, like we saw in the other menus there. More sounding. We're going the wrong way here. Grid ticks, if you want to load up, it'll basically take the scaling from your plotting sheet and place the grid ticks or grid lines on the screen, whether or not you want to label them. Track line parameters, the text information, if you want to plot events and label or label the event marks. Plot the text perpendicular to line, parallel, or a fixed angle. And then here's just an example of some of the results here. Okay, so we went through the DGN stuff. I don't know if it's repeated here. Again, yeah, with the DGN, like I mentioned earlier, the V7, V8 options. There are some softwares, it's the same with AutoCAD, that some softwares can only handle like AutoCAD 12 or something like that, background charts. I've seen that before in some of the plotting or charting programs. So we give the option to do that. And I think it's the same with MicroStation. If some programs only handle the old style MicroStation files. I don't think Bentley has been very forthcoming with a lot of the MicroStation formats. They're not easy to get that information. And that's why we use this open design stuff, because they kind of reverse engineer all that stuff. So here's an example of the original base map, and then importing the soundings to the DGN base map, and then saving it as a DGN file. Okay. Any questions on that? Oh my God, it's getting close. I don't have a whole lot of time. I mentioned earlier about the 3D terrain viewer. This program's been around for quite a number of years, but we haven't done any development in about maybe 3 or 4 years. But the idea is being able to take an XYZ file and do fly-throughs. There's a lot of cool options in here. The drawback, the reason we haven't done development is that it can't handle really large files. I think maybe a 100 megabyte XYZ file would be the max before it really bogs down and runs really slow. But it's got a lot of cool options. It basically generates a tin model. You can set your colors as you want on the screen. You can move around the light. You have a little window here that you can just kind of drag around the light, so you get a display. The lighting display gives you, exaggerates some of the features that you can actually attach the light to the camera. So it's basically looking straight out with the camera in a flat, like looking around with a flashlight kind of thing. You can increase or decrease the vertical exaggeration to make it look a little bit more dramatic. And then you can actually place the camera around manually, or there's a few different ways of placing the camera. So basically what it's doing internally, it takes your XYZ data, generates a TIN model, and then creates the surface on the screen. There's some cool things where I can take in some background TIFF imagery and draw that on the screen. I can overlay TIFFs on top of the data. For example, if I had side scan data that I want to overlay on top of my 3D model, I can do that. Camera control window, like I said, I can drag the camera around and also increase or decrease the elevation of that camera. Change the camera angle, and it'll view the data from that angle. Adjust the lights, and then there's some flight modes. Free flight mode means that you can use a little control panel, increase or decrease, rotate the camera, change the yaw of the camera, change your direction and everything. You can follow a path where you can load up a planned line, and the program will just follow the planned line. Okay, circle fly just generates a circle around the data set. That's kind of comes in handy for like trade shows. They have a nice looking data set, and they just have the camera run around a circle, always pointing towards the data. And then attached to vessel, where you can actually have it running alongside HYPACK survey, where it's basically it's getting the position coming from the survey program. Okay. Follow path, so you'll see, for the follow path, moves the camera forward, backward along a planned line. The camera can't move off the line, but you can rotate the camera as it's moving along the line. And it's kind of cool because you could generate AVIs out of the fly through and everything too. What this will display. My AVIs never seem to work on this computer. But I wanted to show the circle flight here. I'm kind of running out of time here, so. But yeah, a lot of neat little things in here, and then it gets even more complicated. We've added this 3D matrix where you can have it. It runs alongside HYPACK, where you can run basically load the matrix file, add a vessel shape. We have this program called a 3D shape editor, where you can create the different types of 3D shapes. It's a little bit slow and everything. We're trying with the idea of being able to load 3DS files. A lot of those are readily available on the internet, so you can find boat shapes, dredge shapes, car shapes, and so on. I think I created a 747 shape one time with one of the programs. I was able to bring that in as the vessel. And what's cool about it is that you can actually, since it's tied to the survey program, you can add like a water level surface to it, and as the tide increases or decreases in the survey program, you'll see the vessel move up and down, and the water level move up and down in real time in the program. Same with the draft settings. I think Jerry did a project one time with an AUV where they, the AUV obviously is down below. This is when we added the draft function. So, I think it was a remote vehicle, and it did a pretty nice fly through with a real time. It was kind of cool. Some weird nature settings, like you can have sky views and everything. Again, saving out to AVI, saving images to bitmap, JPEG, vertical exaggeration, frame rates. You can adjust that if it's looking a little bit choppy on the screen. But like I said, the larger files are really harder to control with this program, and there's going to need some development to handle some of the larger data sets. Unpacking and packing projects. So if you have a pretty cool setup that you want to give to somebody else that also has HYPACK, you can pack the entire data set into basically like a zip file, email it to them. They can unpack it and basically view the same 3D display that you saw before. I think that's pretty much it. And this describes some of the TIFF overlays. So this was generating a GeoTIFF out of a raster type, I think it's an ARCS chart over in the UK, and then overlaying it right on top of the surface. So there's a lot of really cool options available in here. You could get into transparencies, photo texture settings, the different types of 3D objects that you could bring in. We had one guy over in the UK that was creating some cool things like clock towers out of it, so you could display the clock tower. You had a little football stadium and everything, a lot of neat things. So, there's a lot of fun things in here. Like I said, it is limited in terms of file size. So. But that's pretty much it right now. So.